What would happen if French, German, Italian, and Japanese all disappeared? Some scientists believe that by the year 2100, a staggering 90% of the languages we know today might vanish into the echoes of history forever. And maybe you will end up being the last person on Earth who ever speaks your language. But why are our cherished languages dying? And why do some people say that artificial intelligence is the lifeline we desperately need to save our languages? Well, we dug through folders of reports to find out what's really going on, and in this video we'll break it down in 3 parts to share why our languages are dying and which ones are at risk, how technologies like AI might help save our languages, and what you should start doing today to prepare for a future that will look and sound very differently to the world we live in now. But it all starts with the first part and understanding why our languages are disappearing. If you had to guess, how many languages do you think are at risk of going extinct? Well, as we speak, UNESCO estimates that nearly half of the world's 7,000 languages are endangered. That's right, half. Every 2 weeks, a minority language breathes its last breath and the final words are pronounced never to be heard again. Languages like the native Yamana or Yagan of South America, a language spoken for over 1,000 years by indigenous communities in the Chilean region. But now, 93-year-old Cristina Calderon stands as perhaps the very last speaker in Chile. She used to speak Yagan with her sister Ursula until 2005, when her sister passed away, leaving Cristina with no one to communicate with that could truly speak the Yagan language. And while we were doing our research for this video, we found out that Cristina, the very last known speaker of the Yagan language, sadly passed away on February of 2022. The language is officially considered extinct, and the few written sources that remain today may be the first true tests of the capability of technology and AI to save and revive our languages that we'll see in just a few minutes.
I love the word Mamila Pinatapai. It's from the Yagan language, which is now a dead language. I've never heard the word said properly, so I could be pronouncing it wrong. But the meaning is quite beautiful. It means that moment or feeling when two people both want to initiate something, but neither wants to be the one to start it.
But moving several miles away from Chile into Kenya's Rift Valley, we find another example with Yakunte, a language spoken by the Yaku tribe of the Maasai community in Africa. This language too is on its last breaths, dwindling to its very last speakers.
Orobata and Robata.
There are fewer than 7 known people in the world who speak Yakunte, and all of them are over 70 years old. While some reports talk about ongoing efforts to preserve this language, others share that the Kenyan tribe is preparing for the death of its native tongue. And the loss of our languages isn't just contained in South America and Africa alone. The Chong or Saok language in Thailand and Cambodia is dwindling to about 10 fluent speakers. The Bakanti language of the Aborigines in Australia is shrinking to roughly 20 people. And from the glacial mountains of Iceland to the vast landscapes in Europe, Asia, and here in the United States, we see the candles of many languages burning out. UNESCO maintains a list here where you can see just how many languages are falling into risk every day. Now, some people might say, why does it matter if some small, remote language with fewer than 50 speakers goes extinct? After all, thousands of languages have disappeared before, and it might even seem like it's just the nature of languages: appear, evolve, and eventually fade out. But if we think about it,
language is much more than communication.
They're vessels of history, preservers of culture, and mirrors reflecting the stories and souls of communities that have roamed the earth for thousands of years. Through languages, especially some of the smallest and oldest languages like Yagan, we understand our ancestors' dreams, fears, and wisdom that continue to influence the way we shape the world today. After all, we humans beat out all of the other species in the jungle game of survival, partly because each generation could preserve its history, pass it down to the next, and ensure we grow and improve with each generation. So languages influence our cognitive abilities, creativity, and even our problem-solving skills. Lose a language and you wipe out hundreds or thousands of years of human history and evolution. But what's the reason for this linguistic decline? Well, there are many complex reasons, but to start, technology globalization, and the allure of dominant languages. As popular languages like English and Chinese dominate the digital realm, many indigenous languages find little space for themselves in the increasingly interconnected world. In many of these cases, we see that the younger generations just aren't choosing to learn the languages of their parents and ancestors. They're instead choosing to learn more dominant languages in order to seek better economic opportunities and more closely integrate with the rest of the world. In the case of Yagan, Christina mentioned in interviews that the younger people in her town just weren't studying the native language because they were choosing to study languages they considered more modern, like Spanish. Learning a language for economic opportunity is a practical reason that I'm sure many of us can understand. But does this mean that in order for the next generation to advance economically, we have to watch the languages of our ancestors go extinct? Well, there may be a glimmer of hope on the horizon, and it all starts with this second part, which is artificial intelligence. While technology and globalization are often blamed for killing many languages, AI might ironically be one of our best shots at saving them. The question is, how? Well, before we can save a language, we need to understand it, break down all of its little intricacies like accents and idioms, and then record it. Traditionally, we've recorded languages in books and by directly teaching them to the next generation. But when we don't have the right people that are immediately willing and able to learn the language, this is where AI, especially natural language processing and storage, come into play. AI can quickly analyze text and speech samples at an unprecedented scale and save snapshots of languages for use in the future. Think of it as creating a big digital library of languages that are well recorded, and these libraries can live on for hundreds of years, and whenever we're ready, we can check a language out of the library to learn or use in decoding information. Essentially, it's humans kind of passing down languages to AI to store until the next generation of humans is ready to pick up those languages again. To illustrate how we might use these tools to save languages, consider a linguist named Isabella on a mission to record the last fluent speaker of an ancient language in the Amazon rainforest. With just a backpack of recording tools and an AI-powered transcription software, she goes into the remote village and sits with the elder. As he shares stories of his ancestors, tales of valor, love, and wisdom, all in his native tongue, Isabella's AI tool works to transcribe each word. For him, it's a trip down memory lane, but for Isabella, it's a treasure trove of linguistic data gold that will save a language and empower generations to come. Now, this all sounds nice, but can a few small AI tools really save the world's languages? Luckily, many big companies that you probably know have joined in the fight for our languages. Microsoft launched the Microsoft Translator Hub to let communities all over the world create translation tools for their languages. And Google launched the Woolaroo project, which is pretty cool in that it lets you take a photo of any object around you, like a tree, and it tells you the word for that object in more than 10 endangered languages like Louisiana Creole, Maori, and Yiddish. Google is essentially trying to use AI to make learning endangered languages a fun and interactive adventure. But it doesn't end there. The next tool you'll find in dimly lit rooms with illuminated faces of a parent and child engrossed in a digital storybook. But this isn't your average bedtime story ritual. They're actually diving into multilingual stories told in over 300 languages thanks to tools like Storyweaver that record languages as stories. Some of these languages are endangered, but with every word read aloud, the languages find new life in the ears of children. You have Opi, an AI robot that teaches indigenous languages to kids through stories and games. Obi Translate that preserves and translates over 2,000 African languages for the future, and many more. It's not just about translating and saving language pronunciation files in some archive somewhere. It's about ensuring that every language, regardless of its number of speakers, finds its voice in the future. So there's some hope for us if AI can digitally record languages. But what does that mean for us language learners and non-language learners today? That takes us to part 3, where we look at what technology can't do and the role that each of us will need to play in the future. AI's role in preserving languages is groundbreaking, but like any tool, it has its limitation. Like most AI models, the most important part of its foundation is data. Generally, the more data it has, the better it performs, which is part of the problem. Many endangered languages just don't have a lot of data online. For widely spoken languages like English or Spanish, the internet is a treasure trove of data. But for languages on the brink of extinction, digital footprints are scarce. As you can imagine, there's little to no content on the internet written or spoken in Yagan, and this scarcity poses a significant challenge for training AI models. Without enough data, data, AI's understanding would be superficial, and its ability to generate or translate content and teach us these languages would be very limited.
Most of this knowledge has never been written down anywhere. You can't find it in a book or an encyclopedia or a database. It's only in people's heads. If that knowledge evaporates, then we've all lost something. We're all impoverished by the death of a single language.
Another important thing to consider is that language isn't just about words and grammar. It's a tapestry woven with cultural nuances, idiomatic expression, and historical context. While AI can capture the structure of a language, things like pronunciations, diction, and facial expressions pose greater challenges. Even the most advanced technologies might miss out on these nuances, and that would lead to potential losses in translation and understanding. Then there's the challenge of feedback. For AI to improve, it sometimes requires training to tell it when it's correct and when it's wrong, especially from native speakers. But with many of these languages having just a few speakers worldwide, who will provide this valuable input? And finally, there's accessibility. While AI technologies are advancing at lightning speed, they need to be accessible to the communities they aim to serve. If high-tech solutions continue to be out of reach for remote or underprivileged communities, it will become even more critical to bridge the technological divide. So while AI can be a fantastic tool for documenting and preserving languages, it can't single-handedly save our languages. For a language to really thrive, it needs to be lived, spoken, passed down through generations, and celebrated in literature, music, and art. AI can be a storage vessel, but what will give languages life is people. There are 3 things language learners and non-learners can consider to preserve our languages for the future. Starting with a new form of education. As AI language tools become more mainstream, we should think about how they'll integrate into formal and informal educational curriculums. Imagine a world where students all over the world can learn Yagan right from their phones, and then they get to use the language to complement the rest of their studies. Secondly, think about the potential of virtual reality, augmented reality, and advanced video recording and generation. In the coming years, we might see VR classroom where learners get to immerse themselves in linguistic environments, talk to real native speakers in ancient languages, and experience the cultural nuances of their ancestors firsthand. In the grand scheme of things, I think the next decades will be about more than just language preservation. They'll be about revival. Communities that had resigned to the impending loss of their languages will find renewed hope. New generations will rediscover their linguistic roots, and the world will be richer for it. So thirdly, and most importantly, while AI is a powerful ally, the real heroes that will save our languages will be people like you, who choose to champion, learn, and share the languages that have shaped our history for thousands of years. To get a glimpse of how cool language learning might look like in the future with AI, check out this video where I share how people are already using AI today to practice and learn languages. See you there, and hasta la próxima.